There's no other way to put it, but last week for me was an absolute horror show. I actually only got 3 tips right. Yeah. And one of them was the draw. So I had an absolute stinker. I honestly thought West Coast Eagles were going to get it done. Brisbane Lions as well. I still consider them a top 2 team, but travelling away to Adelaide Oval, I mean, first round Port should have won, so probably should have seen that one coming. And Crows, man, they should have won that. They had that locked up at half time. Hawks, they took a bit of a risk, and Freo, come on, man, what are you doing? Anyway, let's have a look at round 2 tips. Okay, so my round 2 tips, I'm probably going to go a little bit more conservative, maybe a couple upsets here, but I'm not sure. So, the first one, I think Geelong have to win this one. Carlton, the draw, possibly should have won. Geelong coming up against the Pies last week was obviously a pretty hard game. Geelong will not want to be 0-2 to start off the year. I think they're a stronger team than Carlton, but Thursday night footy, Carlton could definitely win. I just don't see them scoring a lot. I think Geelong can score quite a bit. I think with the likes of Jeremy Cameron, who should have a field day, I'm going to tip them by 18. The next one, Brisbane Lions vs Melbourne. This is, as the odds say, could go either way, 50-50, but I think Brisbane Lions will want to win this one at home. They obviously had a very disappointing game the first round, and I think they will bounce back. They're playing a tougher opponent in Melbourne, but they are at home, and they do have a good record at the Gabba. I think the Brisbane Lions will win by about 10 points. This one should be really interesting. If Port can somehow win this one, they will be off to an absolute flyer for the start of the year. Again, if Collingwood win as well, they'll also be off to a very good start of the year. Probably something that most Collingwood fans would expect, maybe not so much the Port fans. But I think Port are a very good chance at winning if they perform like they did last week. I think they're coming up against a lot stronger opposition in Collingwood, and they're not at home. So Collingwood being at home, I think they'll get the win. Now for me, obviously I'm a Crows fan, but I think this is probably the one to watch. I think if Richmond don't win this one, I think they're going to have a pretty tough time this year. They drew against Carlton in a low-scoring match, and they don't perform very well at Adelaide Oval. I think Richmond should win, but Richmond are the top team to play at Adelaide Oval, outside of the numbers of games played at Adelaide Oval, obviously besides Adelaide and Port Adelaide, and their record is not that good. They've actually only won, I think it was 41% of games they play there, whereas Adelaide have a 57% or somewhere around there win percentage. So Adelaide do have a good chance if they can tidy up their game, unlike when they played at GWS. I think it's important for Adelaide to be able to play full 4 quarters. I think that's what's hurt them last week, was they had that big lead and then GWS just came back and Crows didn't kick goals. They were just, I don't know what happened. Anyway, moving on. I think Richmond will win that one by 8 in a low-scoring match. So the next one, Western Bulldogs versus St Kilda. I think the Dogs should win this one. I would be very surprised if St Kilda can put back-to-back games together. They were quite impressive last week, but I just think that they have a low-scoring sort of defensive type game. Bulldogs love to move the ball very quick. I think they'll struggle, so I reckon the Bulldogs will win by about 25. And I couldn't imagine a more boring game. Usually they reserve the Sunday night slots for these boring games. Fremantle versus North Melbourne. Don't care. Freo by 10. Now, realistically, the Sydney Swans should smash Hawks, as the odds show. I think the Sydney Swans will win by about 40. They have a lot better mid, and I was quite disappointed in Hawthorn last week, obviously tipping them against Essendon. They got absolutely thumped. I think they got a lot of work to do, and this could be another thumping. The Essendon vs Gold Coast game could honestly go either way. Gold Coast weren't too bad last week. I know they ended up getting flogged, but there was quite a bit in that game that I thought was pretty good. The Swans were just so dominant in that game, they just didn't even give Gold Coast a chance to play. I think they'll bounce back, and I mean, Essendon's beaten up on a bottom 4 side. It's not that impressive to me. Let's see what happens when Essendon come up against a team that can actually play footy. No offence to Hawks fans, but I still think Essendon get the job done here. I think they'll win by about 15. And this last one, I think West Coast Eagles do have a good chance against GWS. I think GWS let up too many goals against its side like Adelaide, who's obviously not going to be great this year. Adelaide's midfield do struggle to get the ball forward, and I think GWS are similar. So I think both teams, GWS and West Coast, are really going to struggle in the midfield this year. West Coast Eagles have a good chance of kicking a few goals, so do GWS. I think this is going to be a premium Sunday match, boring as, but I think West Coast Eagles will win in a pretty low-scoring but close game. I think West Coast Eagles will win by about 5. So that's my tips for this week. Don't follow me because, I got 3 last week. I suck.